Bengals fans, what is going on? Stone Shields on hand for another edition of Bengals Breakdown. Thank you so much for joining us here this afternoon. Got an exciting show planned out for you guys. The Bengals have narrowed their roster down to 53 players, so we will have the initial Bengals 53-man roster for you guys coming up on today's show, as well as all the transactions and waived players that happened today. But first off, if you haven't hit that sub button already, make sure you do that. YouTube.com/BengalsTV. We will have all Bengals roster news for you here on the channel, as well as watch parties on game day. So all the best Bengals coverage is right here at Bengals Breakdown. You don't want to miss out on that. So help us out and help yourself out. Hit that sub button, YouTube.com/BengalsTV. All right, let's rewind a little bit to Friday. So these are the cuts that the Bengals made on Friday. We've talked about this a little bit at length, but we'll just run through it again real quickly here. The biggest notable name here is Jackson Carman. Of course, his tenure as a Cincinnati Bengal did not work out how him or the organization would have hoped. The Bengals gave him chance after chance after chance, and he wasn't able to capitalize on it. And finally, 2024 is the year where they part ways. Allen George, another notable guy on this list, played some solid corner for the Bengals during the preseason and training camp. He's a kind of a notable name that was let go on Friday. And the Bengals got rid of their fourth quarterback at the time in Rocky Lombardi. So those are the first kind of wave of roster moves that happened for the Bengals last Friday. Now we get back to the present here today, and these are kind of the next five guys that were announced that would be waived from the team. Most notable guy on this list, to me, is Trey Hill. What does this mean? Bengals took him in 2021, interior offensive lineman, played that center position, also played some guard as well. And this tells me that Matt Lee is going to 100% be the backup to Ted Karras at that center position. That was kind of a notable move that the Bengals made, waiving Trey Hill. And then you look at the linebacker spot, Shaka Heyward. It was really going to be between him and Muma Jongmeta to take that last linebacker spot for the Bengals. Ultimately, it ends up being Jongmeta, which we'll get to him a little bit later down the line. Shaka Heyward was a guy that really played good football and was good on special teams for the Bengals. Some people might even argue he was a better special team player than Muma Jongmeta. So some people kind of feel that Shaka Heyward kind of played his way onto the roster, but I think the Bengals made the right move going with Muma Jongmeta. Your first opportunity to get interactive with our show here at Bengals Breakdown with the pin comment of today's show. Would you have cut Shaka Heyward from the 53-man roster? Type Y for yes, type N for no. Personally, I would have. It's very clear that Jongmeta was the better linebacker in my opinion, so I think the Bengals made the right call. But sound off for us in the comments of today's show. Moving forward here with these cuts, some other notable names. Justin Blazek was a name that the team announced yesterday. Really, why that is such a notable move is just because how thin they are at that defensive end position. Only have four of those players healthy on the roster at this point, which we'll get into that room a little bit later in the show. Shedrick Jackson, guy that had a good camp but didn't really do much in the preseason. That wide receiver room was kind of set in stone, so it's only a matter of time before he was let go. Hopefully he finds his way back on the practice squad for Cincinnati. And I feel the same about Cole Burgess as well. Of course, undrafted rookie wide receiver that I really like. Wasn't going to make this Bengals team, but I hope he finds his way back on the practice squad for the Bengals. Kind of moving through this list here, Devin Harper was another linebacker that, had high hopes, kind of challenging for that last linebacker spot, but of course, Muma Jongmeta took that as well. Cam Grandy was the lone tight end to get let go of today. Spend some time later on in today's show talking about that tight end room. Carlos Davis and Domenique Davis, I thought, they were in a competition for with Jade Tufele for that last spot on the interior of the defensive line, but ultimately the Bengals end up going a different direction at that position as well. And these last two guys that were waived are Kendric Pryor and Lance Robinson. Again, you feel bad for these guys. Obviously, you're not rooting against any of these guys, right? But it was kind of, the writing was on the wall for a lot of these guys. Kendric Pryor, Lance Robinson, outstanding football players, but, their time to make the 53 roster for a professional football team, it wasn't going to happen this year. So those are two guys that were also waived by the Bengals today. Now, there's two players that were cut by the Bengals, so if they are a veteran, they essentially are cut and have an opportunity. They don't go through a waiver wire. They can either sign somewhere else or sign back with the Bengals. Logan Woodside is one of them, of course, who was the third quarterback on the roster. And Jalen Davis, a very notable cut by the Cincinnati Bengals. He's played some good football here in Cincinnati, backing up Mike Hilton. But the Bengals ultimately go in a different direction at that spot, opt to go with a little more youth at that position, and ultimately cut Jalen Davis. I don't think he'll have an issue finding a home somewhere else in the National Football League. Now, as we talked about on yesterday's show, this year with the short-term IR, they can put 2 guys on this list, and they'll miss the first 4 weeks, but they don't take up a spot on that 53-man roster. We knew Myles Murphy was going to be one of these guys, right? So there's no surprise there. That second spot was really between McKinley Jackson, we'll talk about him a little bit later on, and Brad Robinson. Ultimately, the Bengals go with Brad Robinson. So Ryan Rico kind of wins that punter battle by default. They obviously don't have a ton of confidence in him if they want to, keep Brad Robinson around for, several weeks while he's dealing with that hip flexor issue. So those are the 2 players that the Bengals have on the short-term IR, again, designated to return after week 4. Once again, an opportunity for you guys to get interactive with our show here at Bengals Breakdown. Who was the most surprising roster cut this year? Let me know. Was it, perhaps Shaka Heyward or, Harper, the linebacker, or Logan Woodside maybe even? Just let us know what you think down in the comments. Who was the most surprising roster cut in 2024 for the Bengals? All right, now let's really jump in to which guys made the roster for the Cincinnati Bengals when we look at their 53-man club. Bengals only have 2 quarterbacks on the football team at this point, Joe Burrow and Jake Browning. I think they would like to add one to the practice squad. Maybe that's Logan Woodside, maybe it's not. I've sat here on this show and said they should give A.J. McCarron a call once again, but really wasn't much of a controversy at that quarterback position. Seems like Browning will be nursing that rib issue, but he'll be healthy for week 1 and ready to back up Joe Burrow week 1 against the New England Patriots. Moving on to the running back spot. Zach Moss, Chase Brown, and Travion Williams. Bengals only have 3 at this point. Of course, Chris Evans is on the season-ending injured list, so we won't be seeing him at all in 2024. I do believe that Samaje Perine got waived or got cut by the Denver Broncos. He's a guy that we'll continue to monitor here at Bengals Breakdown. I really think the Bengals are going to add to that position, either via a trade or the wire. And I think they would really like to upgrade at that running back 3 spot. Travion Williams has done a good job for them, but I think they want to get somebody else into that role. I would be shocked if they went into week 1 without 4 running backs. But they do cut Elijah Collins and Noah Cain, and that's what the room looks like at this point. Receiver was really the room that was the most clear throughout the entirety of this offseason. Of course, Charlie Jones had that knee issue when he banged knees. People were a little concerned that it was going to be significant. But once it proved not to be, you knew these were going to be the 6 guys for the Cincinnati Bengals. I think all will play. I think Burton certainly will play the least of the bunch. But this is your wide receiver room, one of the best in the National Football League, no doubt. And quick little side note, Zach Taylor said he is very confident that Jamar Chase will be out there week 1. So that's very noteworthy. Of course, Jamar Chase in that ongoing contract, call it a saga, I guess, with the Cincinnati Bengals. But Zach Taylor is confident he will be out there week 1, and that should bring a smile to everybody in the 513 space that supports the Cincinnati Bengals. Moving on to tight end. This is interesting. Bengals are keeping 5 guys at this tight end position, which I like. I really wanted Tanner McLachlan to stick around. I think the Bengals understand kind of the worth of Tanner McLachlan, and they understand how important he could potentially be on this team moving forward. They also like what they had in Tanner Hudson. They didn't want to get rid of him, so instead they will rock with 5 tight ends. I'm not going to say it's unprecedented, but it's certainly a hefty number carrying 5 guys. Eric All certainly has stepped up. The Bengals, of course, drafted him this past season, and he was dealing with some injury, but he looked good in the preseason. So this, without a doubt, is the most loaded tight end room of the Joe Burrow era, 100%. Before we continue with the Bengals 53-man roster, I want to give a shout-out to our friends over at Factor because they're the sponsor of today's show. And with football season about to fully take off, look, I don't have time to cook. That's why I use Factor's no prep, no mess meals. Meet your wellness goals thanks to the menu of chef-crafted meals with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. So no matter how busy you are, you'll always have time to enjoy nutritious, great tasting meals. Make today the day you kickstart a new healthy routine. What are you waiting for? Crush your wellness goals this month with dietitian-approved meals and ingredients that you can trust. Head to factormeals.com/BengalsChat50 and use code BengalsChat50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code BengalsChat50 at factormeals.com/BengalsChat50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. All right, let's move over to the offensive line room, the guys that made the roster in this particular position grouping. Matt Lee talked about it at the top of the show with the cut of Trey Hill. He really goes in there as that backup backup center rather to Ted Karras. Jackson Kirkland, Bengals really liked what they saw out of him as a tackle position. Can be a reliable backup, hopefully, if something happens to Brown or something happens to Trent Brown or Amarius Mims or Orlando Brown. Cody Ford, I think he's certainly the weak link to this room, but he sticks around and makes the team for Cincinnati. Bengals really like the versatility he has. Can play on the outside and play a little bit on the interior as well. Defensive tackle. Sheldon Rankins, B.J. Hill, Zach Carter, those are probably going to be your main guys. I think the Bengals hope McKinley Jackson can kind of overtake Zach Carter as that third defensive tackle for the Bengals. But that was also something very noteworthy. I thought McKinley Jackson was going to be placed on that short-term IR, but instead Brad Robbins takes that spot. And that shows me that the Bengals believe that McKinley Jackson will be ready to go somewhere within those first 4 weeks of games, which certainly is noteworthy. I think he has a lot more upside than Zach Carter does. I'm really looking forward to him getting healthy and being out there and getting meaningful reps for the Bengals. That's kind of what the interior of the defensive tackle room looks like at this point. Again, don't be surprised if they choose to add to this room via the waiver wire. And defensive end, like I said, they only have 4 healthy guys at this position right now, with Hendrickson and Hubbard, of course, being your 2 main guys. And then Cedric Johnson, who really came along towards the end of the preseason for the Bengals, really excited about his future. And Joseph Osai, of course, as well. Myles Murphy on that short-term IR, dealing with that knee issue that he's got going on. Then Cam Sample, of course, with that torn Achilles, is going to be out for the year, which is a big loss for the Bengals, and they're really going to feel that at some point throughout the season. But only 4 edge rushers at this point on the team for Cincinnati, another position that they may look to add to at some point here in the near future. Moving over to linebacker. Obviously, Logan Wilson and Jermaine Pratt are your 2 main guys at that position. There was some talk whether the Bengals would have 4 or whether they would have 5. Then Muma Jongmeadow went out there in the preseason and absolutely balled out for the Cincinnati Bengals, and he makes that roster for Cincinnati. Congrats to him and his family. Hopefully he can play well in special teams. And, if his number gets called for him defensively under Lou Anarumo, hopefully he does an excellent job because he really did have a great preseason. So undrafted rookie free agent Muma Jongmeadow makes the roster for the Cincinnati Bengals. Again, another opportunity for you guys to get interactive with our show here at Bengals Breakdown. Name a player you want the Bengals to add, either via a trade or through the waiver wire. I do believe somebody will get added to this roster very, very soon. So give us a name, sound off for us in the comments of today's show. Moving over to that cornerback spot. We got DJ Turner still there as that cornerback too. We're going to update that very soon because it's going to be Dax Hill, no doubt about that. And they really like what they got in rookie Josh Newton. I think that's why Jalen Davis really found his way off this roster. They like what Newton can do in that slot, kind of as Mike Hilton's backup in that nickel position. And, of course, DJ Ivey's still on that PUP list, so hopefully he can return at some point this year. But that's what the cornerback room looks like for Cincinnati. Safety-wise, keeping 5 guys. That's I don't think a lot of teams around the league are going to keep 5 guys at that position. But Cincinnati's going to do that. Why? Because Dejon Anthony really popped off in camp in the preseason. He really opened eyes. 7th-round rookie out of Ole Miss. He works his way onto this roster, was getting reps with the ones in those dime packages. And I think the Bengals really like what they have in Dejon Anthony. And I really, really like this safety room top to bottom. All 5 guys are really good players and looking for them to make an impact this year for the Bengals. Now we get over to the specialists. McPherson, of course, inked his extension. No controversy there. Cal Adamitis has done a great job as the long snapper for the Bengals. Then Ryan Rico kind of wins that battle by default. We'll see how he does the first 4 regular season games. on whether or not when Brad Robbins is healthy, he takes back that spot. But Ryan Rico is going to be your guy at that punter position, at least for now, unless they, try to pick up a veteran or whatever the case may be. But it seems like Ryan Rico will be that guy week 1 for the Bengals. Kick return, we'll see what they do as far as Chase Brown or Travion Williams. Of course, both those guys make the roster at the running back position. And Charlie Jones, look for him to be your punt returner in 2024 for the Bengals. So sound off for me in the comments. Rate the Bengals roster 1 to 99. I want to know what you guys think. Just went through their initial 53-man roster. Really think it's a solid roster for the Bengals. I think it's one of the better ones in the National Football League. But sound off in the comments for us. Let us know what you think. Scale it 1 to 99.